just gonna make sure everything is. Oh wow, I posted the outline in the thing. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, got the.
All right, we are live. Welcome everyone. Big up to the YouTube chat. We'll be going over the events that are going on in Bangladesh now. If let's see, live chat. So I have two guests with me today. We have Mr. Ganga Putra and we have Sensory Games, aka. So yeah, polemicist, big up, big up. Hope everybody's doing well. I know it's been a long time since we've gone live. So we'll see how it goes. But I thought that this was an important topic to kind of go through since the media is doing a pretty shit job of coverage. So we'll go through the basics and try to get, just a basic understanding of the situation in Bangladesh that's happening right now as hundreds of our Hindu brothers and sisters are being murdered. So let's say hello to Ganga and Ashwin. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, hi.
Okay. Hello. There we go. Just make sure everyone can be heard. Ashwin, can you be heard? Okay.
Am I
All right.
audible?
So if
Is there any
yeah,
issues with
I can
my
hear you.
microphone?
Oh, we can hear you. You're good.
Yeah, sometimes you break
Hi
up, Jen.
Eunice.
Like, I
Hi
mean,
Randy.
I kind of lose you. Hello?
All right. Well, I'll make sure that my mic is next to me. I think it's like when my wireless mic goes like
Hmm.
far, then. But I'll make sure that I stay like this. Is it good like this?
Yeah, it's all
Good,
right.
good.
There's no noise from my
Yes.
microphone, right?
Nope, not
Yeah,
at
it's
all.
clear? Yeah, sure.
Clear. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I figured we would start with just kind of giving a basic rundown of the key players and their political affiliations. Seems like it's a little confusing to people. Some people say Sheikh Hasina is a moderate, and some people refer to her as a dictator. So maybe we can kind of go through and you guys can give a little clarity on what her stance is politically. Is she a far right dictator or is she a communist, like moderate? Um, Hasina, I
Yeah,
guess she's the major one here, who is the PM of, well, she has resigned, but she was the PM of Bangladesh. Go ahead.
yeah. Can I go?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. So, first things first, like just to whet your appetite a little bit. Um, during the entire protest, before we get into the fact of protest
Static.
that we do.
We're hearing static.
Am I audible now? I'll be clear now. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
good, good. Yeah.
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 Go for it.
So just to whet your appetite, um, before we get into the facts of exactly what this issue is, for our panelists as well, I would like to make a very interesting remark. Throughout this entire protest, then leading up to the toppling of the regime in Dhaka, what had happened was that the Islamists and the lefties had coordinated together, right, to topple the government. One of the first things that has now happened is that as soon as the government has been deposed, Islamists have taken over, and the first thing that they've done is they have gone out on a rampage, murdering people, members of the Communist Party, leadership primarily, and so they turned against the very people that they were, you know, uh, sort of uh, fighting against Hasina, right? So that is, in my sort of assessment, it is a foretelling. What's happening? Hello, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah. I was just putting the article up of the, the Awami League leaders killed. There was 29 of them. I was just putting the article up, the first post article. You can continue. Just something for them
Yeah.
to look at. Mhm.
So I think this is a point that is important to look at, because this is one of the first examples after, like, postmodernist ideas taking over political consciousness of the entire world, that lefties and Islamists have actually immediately turned against each other to murder each other, right? So even with Iraq this happened, but the interesting thing about that is that wokeism had not spread that far, but today we live in the era of the victory of postmodernist thought, and in this age of wokeism, if you will, this is a first major example of Islamists taking over a country, and the first thing that they did was their collaborators, which were the lefties, they have turned against them. And turned against meaning like they have actually went out and killed their leadership. So that's interesting, so that they remain unchallenged. Now, before I enter into who these characters are, who Hasina is, all these things, I think a background to exactly what Bangladesh is also very important. Very briefly, I'm sure some of us already know, but Bangladesh was a nation that was created in 1971. Uh, uh, and there was a war that created this nation. The country before Bangladesh that existed in that same geography was called East Pakistan. It was part of larger Pakistan, right, which comprised of two non-contiguous geographical regions in South Asia. The modern day Pakistan that you see, and then you see Bangladesh. It used to be, the modern day Pakistan used to be called West Pakistan, and on the eastern front, the same country, but no geographical, like, connection. It used to be called East Pakistan. They were the same country, but they're just separated through geography. So that's one. Why was Bangladesh or East Pakistan formed in the first place? Well, the principle was basically the same. Um, uh, Around 1940s, Islamic leaders in India, in British India, started raising an issue uh, that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together, and we are separate countries. This was propagated by thinkers and intellectuals on the Islamic leadership side, predominantly Allama Iqbal. Allama is like the title that is afforded to him in Pakistan. I just call him Muhammad Iqbal. I don't want to afford any respect to the man. So you have Iqbal, and the leadership was ideological, and the leadership that ended up with the partition of India and Pakistan into a separate new country called Pakistan. The guy who led the entire movement was this Indian Muslim guy called Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Um, so basically, Pakistan and India were created to create a separate homeland for Muslims only, while India had a majority of Hindus. In principle, it was created as a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-religious society with a majority population that was Hindu. So India never, like, sort of stated that this is going to be a Hindu country, and neither is that our stand even today. Uh, yes, there is much more vocality on interests of Hindu communities um, today, because of the rise of overall conservatism throughout the world, which I don't think is a bad thing. Um, And like I say, not all, like I mean, uh, many commentators have said not all religions are equal. I say not all kinds of conservatism is also equal, right? So an Islamic conservative nation will obviously be far more radical than a Buddhist conservative nation, like let us say um, a country like Myanmar, right? So the religious violence will be much more. Of course, even with Myanmar, there's been a lot of propaganda that Buddhists are creating the violence, but the fact is that even there, like the Islamists were the ones who started this in the first place. Of course, then there's internal ethnic strife that has nothing to do with religion. But as things stand, uh, religious violence and the sort of justification of religious violence uh, is a privilege that is afforded only to Muslims. Why is that? Whether it is in the West or in the rest of the world, is because they will kill you, right? If you talk too much, and if you start examining them on the same metrics as you would examine any other religion and religious polity thereof, they will kill you. So that creates a sort of unwarranted, mm, I suppose, respect, because that is what is happening in the West. People talk about Islamophobia all the time. We are going through an age of Islamophilia in the West. When a completely stupid individual like Ben Affleck would show up in a talk show like the Bill Maher show and ask him, whether Bill Maher is an expert to comment on Islam or not. It is basically the same line as what the jihadis will take. But now you have Ben Affleck doing that. Now, will he ask the same kinds of questions when somebody is making some sort of jokes on Christianity, for example? Why aren't these questions asked? Like, are you a pastor for commenting on, or are you a rabbi for commenting on Judaism or not? These questions are not asked, right? This is a special
Exactly.
privilege that is, yeah, these privileges are specially afforded only to, Islam and Islamic polity, particularly. But things
It's
are
funny
changing.
because it's
Yeah.
the same thing that the extreme left does, right? So they shut down arguments if you say something, they criticize you, or so it's funny that like they work in tandem to achieve the goal, but then in reality they're so polarized that they can never exist together. So it's like they use each other, like we just saw happen, right? And then once they've achieved the goal, then they have no more use for them than just kill. Like you're done,
And that's
right? They have
exactly what
no.
has happened. That's exactly what has
Exactly.
happened in the case of Bangladesh.
Ashwin,
I
feel
think
free to chip in whenever you want. You don't have to just join the convo. Do you have anything to add? Go ahead.
Um, First, I'd like to add is that the Bangladesh, as we talk today, were at the forefront of creating Pakistan. In fact, like they are the ones who started the movement of Pakistan, which is something like many avoid, since Bangladesh was even created before even like West Pakistan was formed. Like this is something like many people like try to hide or something like that. Mostly the leftists who tried to hide the situation. They were, in fact, more radical than the Western Pakistan counterpart, basically. And Eastern Pakistan was actually the first region to be carved out, basically. It was a huge Bengal state, which was divided into like West Bengal, which is the Hindu state, and East Bengal, which became like East Pakistan later on. So like some like usually try to say that like it was British fault or something like that. But I personally don't think it was the British fault. The Muslims of India were always in support of a caliphate in India. They were never like in favor of a democratic nation or a secular nation or anything. They wanted Muslim rule in India. That is something like many people don't highlight it openly. For example, if we take the Khilafat movement, it was basically the Indian Muslims of that time. They wanted to bring back the Ottoman Empire. which caused the ripple effect in India as Pakistan, in fact. Right. Yeah, this is what like I was trying to convey.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
and that's the thing. This is actually, I mean, I know it sounds like, we are deviating from the topic a little bit, but this is important what Ashwin ji is saying, because it was in fact the demand for a separate electorate, meaning Muslims wanted their own election constituencies, like separately, like only Muslims will be their candidates, only Muslims can vote in certain constituencies that will be afforded to them in this new democracy that was being envisioned after 1947 as the British left India. And actually this sort of disagreement that Muslims just wanted to run a state within a state, right? And that is why you had the formation of Pakistan, right? Because if you're going to do all of this, if you want to keep your democracy separate, then might as well be a separate country. And it is something that came from their side, like the Hindu side didn't demand for it. And eventually, and Ashwinji is right, the radicalism element has always been far more in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, than West Pakistan. And it is a topic which is often avoided for a variety of political reasons also in India. Now, coming back to the topic, so in 1971, Pakistan is formed. Now, what is important for us to know from an international, um, political perspective is that in 1971 there was also this factor of the Cold War, peaking, not quite peaked, but I mean it peaked around 1980, 82, 83 or something like that. But 1971 was like a run up, right? And it was hurtling in that direction. We had just come off of the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And now all through the 70s there was this discomfort between the two great powers, but it was what it was. Bangladesh became a pawn in this game. You see, India was on the third front. Most of the world was divided into the first world, the second world, and the third world. Now, most people assume the third world to be, a country of underdeveloped countries, etc. I mean, a domain of underdeveloped countries. That's not true. This distinction was created on, you know, the first world countries were the countries which were in support of the US and allies. Later on, NATO came out of it. The second world countries were those countries that supported the Soviets and their allies. And then you had the third front, which was called the non-aligned movement, which had a lot of other countries, newly decolonized countries, etc., such as India, which would often state that they are on no side, but end up being on one side or the other anyway. So tacitly, India was on the side of the Soviets. Now, India didn't have a lot of capability back in the 70s to do anything. I mean, all through the 60s, 70s, the economic condition wasn't exactly great in India. Uh, but it was getting better. You were not on your own 2 feet either at that time. Um, However, what happened was during the 1971 Bangladesh war, what had happened was that uh, East Pakistan was basically raised an issue of uh, racist discrimination or ethnic discrimination, because in East Pakistan, most people were of the Bengali ethnicity, right? Now, in West Pakistan, you have a number of different ethnicities, the largest being the Punjabi ethnicity. They're there in India as well, they're Hindu as well, but in Pakistan, most of them are Punjabi Muslims. Then there are the Pashtuns, which are like basically Afghans also who are native to Pakistan. Then you have the Baloch. Then you have some various tribal groups, and then you have within the Pashtun and the Baloch groups, and then you have the Sindhi population, which is south of Pakistan. Um uh, what is interesting is that in 71, I think 1969 or 70, there was an election, general elections for the election of the prime minister. Now, I mean, Islamic countries are fundamentally unstable, right? And this was a country where there was a huge ethnic difference between two disconnected geographic entities. Bangladesh had a large number of people who were a very huge size of the population of Pakistan overall, who were Bengalis. Uh, and then Pakistan had their own ethnic groups, with the majority being in control, which is the Punjabis. Uh, and at that time, the guy who was in charge in Pakistan was actually a Sindhi man by the name of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Uh, that I mean, there was elections, and Zulfikar and on one side, and Mujib on the other side fought the elections to become the prime minister side by side, right? And Mujibur Rahman, who was a ethnic Bengali, he won the election. And when he did win the elections, people in Western Pakistan, specifically Punjabis under Bhutto, they decided to not make him the prime minister but imprison him for winning an election, right? And this led to a fundamental, sort of a breakdown in the relationship between the two Pakistans. And what ended up happening is that it led to basically a war. India was an interested party in this. And what also happened was that we sort of trained their revolutionaries to sort of go against Pakistan, which was called the Mukti Bahini. This special force was called the Mukti Bahini. This is going to come up in the issue that we are now dealing with as well. Another thing, give me a second. Yeah, so another thing that happened was uh, there's this element of um, am I audible? Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah. So what were you saying? What was the last organization you just said?
The Mukti Bahini.
Mukti
Mukti.
Bahini.
Yeah, Mukti Bahini.
Okay. And these are, I'm sorry, who are they again? Pakistani? Mukti Bahini. Sorry, I'm just trying to look. I'm trying to keep up. So I'm trying to.
Basically, they were the revolutionaries like who were supported by India. Yes, that's what he was trying to say.
No,
Oh,
and they were the revolutionaries that were on the side of Mujib, the prime minister candidate who had won uh,
Mhm.
uh, the elections in Pakistan in 70. And
mm,
basically, they went against Pakistan. But
okay.
before that, Pakistanis realized that quote unquote situation is going out of hand in Bangladesh. And one of the things that ended up happening is there was a mass genocide. We know that now through declassified documents that have been released in, by Pakistani military, etc. Um, and one of the things that they had planned for is actually, and we know this because Pakistani authors have published books on this now. There was a plan to completely wipe out the Bengali race, right, and change the genetic makeup of it. And like there were planned rapes and basically like, and it was led by what is now the Pakistani army, or the or West Pakistan army, right? Um, uh, because of this whole drama, uh, in 1970, the Americans were actually on the Pakistani side, right? So, naturally, when there was a revolution in East Pakistan and they decided to become a separate country, they aligned with the enemies of Pakistan, which was one India, and whose friend was India, the Soviets. And can you hear
So
me?
the
Hello?
United States backed Pakistan
Yeah,
against
yeah.
Bangladesh.
Yes, and not just that,
Okay.
Jenji. It was also like, just as things are happening now, there was a mass genocide of Bengalis in Bangladesh, what would become Bangladesh, and Americans had nothing to say on that because
Yeah.
their good friend Pakistan was doing it. So,
So stupid.
so, and it was a very planned attempt to completely change the genetic makeup of Pakistan. There's some really mean things said, which are now documented by very people that were high up in Pakistani army, like we will take their women, things like that, and change. We will wipe out this entire race of people, this and that. So this is Muslims against Muslims. Very interesting. Now, see, the power of Islamism is a very, I mean, it has to be appreciated. You know, uh, despite of a genocide in Bangladesh, despite of that resulting in a separate country and their own revolutionaries popping up as a result of that, again later on supported by India as well. Despite of all of this, today the situation in Bangladesh is such that they see that, you know, Muslims around the world uh, get to have their way and say even in Western countries. So it's a powerful, you know, radical Islam is a powerful political movement, and they are influenced by it. As an Islamic country, you will be influenced by it. And so the flavor of the season for the past 20, I would say 20, 30 years in Bangladesh has been that of the return to Islamism. The very same thing that caused their genocide, they now are in love with it again. Their biggest enemy in their own mind is India. Even as we sort of, you know, help them grow economically, and uh, you know, we maintain good relations bilaterally, etc., etc. Any small thing that they would perceive as an interference, so long as it is done by quote unquote Hindus of India, of course India is not just Hindus, um, that is completely shunned. And if some sort of involvement of Pakistan is there in Bangladesh, that for the past, like, at least decade or two, I can tell you, has had a very softer approach. I mean, in Bangladeshis are have been more comfortable with the people who tried to genocide them because they're the same religion, basically, than the dirty, disgusting people that they had parted with in 1947 because they couldn't live with like these, you know, idolatrous infidel Hindus. So that is where we are at today. Muslims genocided them, and they want to go back to the same influence. That's interesting. I I have, you know, some points that you have mentioned here. I want to focus on that actually. I want to focus on the order of events, exactly what happened. I would like to keep it short, but it is complex. So the first question that has
Hmm.
been posted here is whether Sheikh Hasina is a dictator or not. Right. So, in order to understand who Sheikh Hasina, I mean, whether she's a dictator or not, we have to understand who Sheikh Hasina is. Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of the founder of Pakistan, of Bangladesh. Okay, which is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Uh, Sheikh Mujib and his when he was imprisoned in Pakistan after he had won the election to become the prime minister, he of course came back, and I mean, and there was a mass movement in Bangladesh to sort of separate. And then when a new country was formed in 1971, he became the new prime minister of the country. And the the groundwork for this was basically laid by making an argument that this is a language movement. Okay, so we are Bengali people, we are a separate ethnic group, uh, and you know, and we speak a separate language from these Punjabis in Pakistan. Therefore, we are, you know, separate, and we need to be a different country. That's sort of a superficial sort of an argument that they also made. The fact was there was a political disagreement. They didn't like the ethnic group that the leader of the ethnic group that won the elections, and as a result of that, you know, they imprisoned the guy instead of making him the prime minister. It's just pure racism at work. Now, Sheikh Hasina is the daughter of this guy. Um, it's a very interesting history after 1971 when Bangladesh gets formed, because in right after the formation of Bangladesh in 1975, there's a coup against Mujib. There was, from what I'm told, there was a famine in Bangladesh that resulted in the unpopularity of Mujib. Uh, but I think
Was that the
it is
British
also,
imposed famine? Are
no,
we
no, no.
going?
So
Is that,
British are
or is
gone.
this after this? Okay,
The
so
British
this
are
is the
gone by
second.
1940. This Bangladeshi policy is failing and like collapsing on itself, basically.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So some dates are very important. um, can we please remove this Pakistani who is like commenting here?
Yeah, allow
Please
them.
don't-
That's let them. Just don't. Just
I mean,
continue.
listen,
Don't worry about it.
listen.
Yeah,
Just
it's
because you type in upper, upper case letters, like doesn't make you right. This is not the speaker's corner. Okay,
yeah,
there's some
it's fine.
serious. Yeah,
I know.
listen. I mean, I have to say this. Like, yes, I am bothered by these things. I mean, I will not be, told off by sweepers in UK, etc. And mechanics and all these people, like, who leave their own paradise of a country and they go and wipe white people's asses over there. What is right and what is wrong? Okay, so first get an education. You can bark in that country. We will speak whatever we want. Okay, what kind of an extremist I am or not is a different matter.
Chillo.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so no, every time you won't get this say no in everything. You can't bark in everything. So sometimes let us also bark, right? I know you, the education system from which you have come, uh, that hasn't told you, an alternate version of what you think is right. But then again, education is important. Even in the UK, you're trying to create the paradise where you had come from. So that's very interesting to me. Anyway, so persecution of Christians is something I'll come to. In Bangladesh, by the way, it's very concerned about Christian persecution in India. So I'll come to that also, that what is happening in Bangladesh right now. So Sheikh Hasina, like I said, was a daughter of Mujib, and in 1975, when there was a coup against Mujib, again these were the jihadi extremists who sort of led this sort of movement, uh, and this is the other side. This is the opposition politics in Pakistan, in Bangladesh today, by the way. You have moderates on one side, secularists, somewhat of a secularist, because in an Islamic country you can never really be non-Islamic, right? So you have a sort of a centrist secularist, but also with a Islamic flavor, a party which is called the Awami League, which is the party of Sheikh Mujib and Hasina, right? And then you have on the other side, you have the BNP, or the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which is an offshoot of the Jamaat-e Islami, which is basically the Muslim Brotherhood of the subcontinent. Uh,
Okay,
People
so this is what I
like,
wanted to clarify. So this Awami party is Sheikh Hasina's party. That's the party that she belonged to, correct?
yes.
Okay,
So
so this
Awami,
party is seen as like, if you had to put it on a scale, like on
an
the,
ideological scale, and an
yeah,
ideological scale, it would be closer to the center than right. Okay,
center
closer to,
leftist,
no, not center left. You can't be center
center
left.
right.
You can't be left.
Really?
You'll be
You
killed.
could be center, like, yeah, you could be center left a little bit.
You can be center left, but you will not be able to form a government in an Islamic country as a center left party,
Gotcha.
unless you
Okay.
are,
Okay.
yeah, unless you are, what was Saddam Hussein's thing, the the Ba'athis. That was an interesting experiment. But even
Mm,
they went somewhat Islamic, despite of their, like, socialistic leaning. I wouldn't say communist or like very ultra left. There were, I mean, whether you're the seemingly left or the right or ultra right in Pakistan, or in any Islamic country, you have to have a flavor of Islam. There has to be a,
mm,
paint job of green done on all of them. So you'll understand the complexity of it as I move forward. Now,
mhm,
the Awami League, for you to be able to track properly, Awami League would translate into the People's League. Awam means people, right? So, uh, the League of People, that is what it will translate to, Bangladesh Awami League. Okay, so Awami League is the party of, and this is on an ideological spectrum. You can consider it to be close to center, not quite right. On some issues, a little left of center, mostly economic when it comes to welfare, and but that is to be expected of poorer countries, right? Where you need more welfare schemes, etc., to stabilize the country, because when you are a sizable chunk of you is poor and they feel like their needs are not being met, there will be a revolution if you don't satisfy the poor with freebies, right? So that is what happens in this. This is true for all of South Asia, I would say, and Bangladesh is no different. So on some economic issues, the Awami League will be on left of center. Mostly it is center, mostly center, sometimes center right, and sometimes center left. So you can, on an
that's why
average,
they
you can,
call her
if,
moderate, right? Is that why they
yes,
call her like,
she is a
okay,
moderate.
Okay, so then
Ideologically
there's the
speaking,
BNP, which would be their far right.
yes,
If you
there
had to
is
like
no,
make an
yeah.
equivocation.
The
Okay.
BNP is, you know, there is a right wing in
Mm,
Bangladesh which has no say or power. Okay, we'll get to that as well. The
mm,
BNP is definitely far right. And one of
okay.
the reasons for that is that, see, the thing is, ever since the 70s, Bangladesh has been formed. Sometimes the right would have been in power, sometimes the center would have been. Sometimes Awami, sometimes BNP, right? And you can almost track, you know, events when BNP is in power, the Islamist activities, it rises and things like that. And when
Mm,
Awami League is in power, there's more of international cooperation, economic concerns take, uh, uh, sort of a primary this thing. And that's the thing, I mean, like, you have an Islamic right taking over. Okay, like I say, like, not all rights are, I mean, will you consider the Republican Party to be wanting to, realistically wanting to create a Christian nation, right? They may say those things in a rhetorical way, but it's not really feasible or possible given the nature of the American society, right? So can
yeah,
you
of course,
really
there's sections of them that would like to
yes,
do that, but that's like a
yes,
minority of the
exactly.
evangelical. Right, right, right.
But it's not really possible, it's not feasible. The thing with Islamic societies is that, all of them, whether it is feasible or not, all of them have wet dreams of, establishing a Sharia oriented society, right? So so uh, sometimes these strange imaginations, find a way to manifest itself in a extremist sort of a situation, wherein they, whether or not an an ultra right government is good for the country, it doesn't matter in an Islamic society. If there is space for the ultra right to grow, the public actually supports them ideologically. This is true for all Islamic societies, right? Whether or not it is feasible is not really much of a concern. So so basically, the BNP is far right, I would say, and while it is a political party, it is an offshoot of something called the Jamaat-e Islami, right? Jamaat-e Islami, famously established by Maulana Abul Ala Maududi, who was an Indian uh, mother. His organization is the mothership of all jihadis. Um, and Jamaat-e Islami is basically, in short, if you want to understand, in the subcontinent, Jamaat-e Islami is the equivalent of Muslim Brotherhood. Nothing more, nothing less. In fact, Muslim Brotherhood has taken a lot of cues and inspirations from the works that came out of the Jamaat-e Islami, Maulana Maududi's writings, etc. He is the guy who sort of gave the world this new direction in the modern times to hate the West.
Mm.
If you are an Islamist, you have to hate the West. There's something
So this,
very unique to. Yeah.
so this Jamaat-e Islami, is there in Bangladesh only, or they're in India and Pakistan as
Yes,
well?
yes, Janji. So that's what I was
All
trying to
three.
get at. So
Okay.
Jamaat-e Islami was a singular organization before the subcontinent split. After the
Mm,
partition in 1947, you had East Pakistan, West Pakistan. Then 71, a third partition takes place between Pakistan, right? Wherein you have Bangladesh and now Pakistan. So what you have now is Jamaat-e Islami Hind, which is in India. Then you have the Jamaat-e Islami Pakistan, which is in Pakistan. And then you have the Jamaat-e Islami Bangladesh. All three have same ideological component. Okay, it's just that they are sort of they are the same organization, but like their management is split, etc. Now, so they can have plausible deniability that we have nothing to do with the Bangladeshi organization, the Pakistani organization, because if you have a Jamaat Islami in Pakistan and if you have a Jamaat Islami in India, right, and if they do not split their management, people in India can easily say that these people are Pakistani agents and therefore it is fair to persecute them and throw them in jail. Okay, so that is why, for political correctness they've done that, but ideological component is the same. There is a lot of cooperation, coordination when they are outside of the subcontinent. Let us say I am a member of the Jamaat Islami in Pakistan, and another member is in Bangladesh and another member is of India. Let us say they migrate as a community to the United States. There is no difference because they're the same. Right? So but only for pretenses, they are separate. Another thing with the Jamaat-e Islami is that it is the mothership of the fundamentalist Islamic fundamentalist organizations, all of them. Of course, the Jamaat Islami Hind, which is the one in India, that genie is kept in the bottle in a very nice, interesting way. But in Pakistan, they have a lot more say. They run rampant. In Bangladesh, they were a voice uh, that was on the extreme end, and there were many silent takers, more than you would actually think, which is why this has resulted. This so-called revolution is a product of Jamaat Islami actually, and there was a lot of radicalism. You can trace all radicalism in the subcontinent to the Jamaat Islami. So, and the
Mm.
interesting thing is, in Bangladesh, Jamaat Islami has a proper political party, which is the BNP. Okay, so the right
Okay.
wing,
That's
yes,
okay. Gotcha.
yeah. So it's
Mm.
like Muslim Brotherhood having a political party, like you have in Egypt.
Right.
So
So is
yeah,
this the party that America supports?
that's what has happened now. So we're
Okay.
slowly going to that direction. It is a bit complicated. I mean, Bengalis are known for the intellect, even in India, whether Hindus or Muslims. So there are the more intelligent people there are, per square feet in a geography, the more complexity of thought there is going to be. But I assure you, I can explain it to you much more simply. If you pay attention, you'll be able to track what is happening. Now,
Hmm.
um, now the thing is, in 71 you have a separation. Bangladesh becomes a separate country. Now in 1975, the people who founded Bangladesh, there's a coup against them by jihadis. So then the BNP takes over. So there is a phase of left right, I mean not left, center versus right, taking over the government every now and then. And no matter which government was in power, they would completely control all institutions. So let's say the BNP is in control, they take over all institutions. Then if the Awami League is in control, even if they're the centrist party, they know that the only way to run a chaotic Islamic country is by, like, through a strong hand. So the Awami League used to take over. So this is nothing new. Okay, if Sheikh Hasina would be considered dictator by these standards, the leadership of the BNP would be no less, right? So um, the recent chaos is a product of several international political interests coalescing all together in one geography, which is Bangladesh. Um, Now, I would want to get into the strategic aspect of this, and that would be sufficient for most people who are listening to this podcast. Uh, but we have to touch upon some other topics also that you've listed, which are important. Okay, and then we have to
Hmm.
go to the series of events, like what happened, how it happened, etc.
Sure. Ashwin, do you have anything to add? Like I said, feel free to just jump in. You don't
Yeah.
have to be prompted. Go ahead.
The complexity of the Bangladesh situation was that if Hasina came into power, the mm, the country was more secular compared to like the right wing side. So usually there was a situation that Hindus had no other choice in Bangladesh but to support the Hasina's party. Like because when the right wing comes into power, there has been a lot of open persecution where like the Hindus don't get justice. So it was a problem for the Hindus if they don't support Hasina in this matter. Like many people might think, but the Hindus were like protected or something like that. As many people like try to like close up the matter in this situation. The Hindus who stood with the students' protest, for example, even after even after like Hasina left, the same students like who supported the movement, who are Hindus, were also attacked by the Muslims. So it was almost like a setup to an extent. It sounded like as if it was all pre-planned. As soon as like Hasina left, the Hindus would get attacked because like past 10 past like 5 years or something like that, there was an increase in like pro-Pakistan alignment in Bangladesh, and there was a like a very negative view of Hindus, because like they were spread propaganda such as like Modi was a dictator, like he hated Muslims and stuff. It all led to this. For example, if you take like a few months back, the ICC cricket World Cup, the Muslims in Bangladesh were not happy India winning it. For example, big the Bangladeshis were not in like in the finals, but they did not like it, and the particular reaction was clipped and it was spread out across the internet, like what exactly happened. So like it was quite visible that the Muslims of Bangladesh had a anti-India stance, and mainly in social media you start actually seeing like Bangladeshis and Pakistanis actually becoming more friendlier than like previous years and stuff. It almost looked like the Ummah ideology of Islam is coming together, something like that. Even though like they were conflicted, plus there were many videos circulated like of the former events by the Muslims of Bangladesh themselves. Uh, for example, many grapes happened where openly it was telecasted in Telegram and stuff. Like they basically were telling like this is how like Hindus should be treated in Bangladesh, so they would leave Bangladesh forever. So this wasn't just like anti Hasina movement or something like that. Even when Hasina was in power, these kind of persecutions did happen. But since like you're in a Muslim country, you cannot exactly take action against Muslims who are doing it. So like the justice given like was not like an option for Hindus over there. So this was always a problem between between the Hindus and even Awami League for an extent, because in a Muslim country you can never be anti-radicals, to be exact, like in any Muslim country. So like this was the case, and why there was a surge of Hindus from Bangladesh moving to India. And the major problem India had with the immigration is that uh, it was not just the Bangladeshi Hindus who were coming into India. There were even like Bangladeshi Muslims and Rohingyas of Myanmar getting into India. And it was quite visible the problem happening in India. They started like attacking Hindu festivals such as that. So like India's kind of hesitant to take even the Hindus in, for example, because you would not know who's a Hindu and who's a Muslim. Like no one is going to like uh, to be like quite frank, no one is going to check your pants. Basically, they're not going to like remove your pants and check. That's how blatantly like you have to put it. So like when these people are coming, they bring in their ideas as well. So it was kind of unsafe for India to an extent. Why India even introduced CAA NRC? CAA basically means like giving citizenship to non-Muslim immigrants inside India in a shorter period of time.
Mhm.
Then NRC is basically registered citizens of India who claim to be citizens, basically something like that. The government would go deep into that to check your citizenship. Are you part of India, or are you an illegal immigrant in India? So this was something the leftists in India were against, because NRC is something like which would make many Rohingyas to be kicked out of India, for example. Plus, there were many cases in the sense where the Rohingyas had fake citizenships of India. They had like basically made up fake cards in order to get citizenship inside India. So this was kind of happening like across India, not just West Bengal or like in northeastern states. So like this is a problem which is a concern even for India, not just Bangladesh. The civil war which is basically going on. So like
So people like
mostly
really
yeah.
labeled it a civil war now.
Mhm.
Like, has it
Yeah.
gotten to that label?
Mhm.
Wow.
Because right now like there are even Hindus who are fighting against the Muslims. I just saw like
Yeah.
few hours back where Muslims have started beating like where like Hindus have started beating the Muslims who are coming into their area and stuff. So it
I
has been
saw
happening. Yeah.
yesterday the Hindus rallied in Dhaka. They had a
Mhm.
huge protest. So at least they're kind of, making a stand, trying to stand up for themselves. But
But
if it
how long?
escalates,
Oh, that's a front.
exactly, right.
That's a
Yeah.
front. That is like trying to deviate from the international attention. Okay, it's actually counter to what you would think, like that they're making a protest about it. There's also like nice propaganda that people are being protected. You know, uh, there was this news of like people forming a human chain around some sort of a temple somewhere, and the minorities are being protected. But protected by whom? And protected against whom? So it's a question, right? There is no we will also come to the fact that
It is
there's no
basically like you becoming the bully and collecting taxes to like protect the population from yourself.
the
That's the kind of
relation
situation.
the relationship that most other communities have with Islamic politics is like a toxic relationship, right? If you choose to have a relationship with them, we used to have a relationship with them back in the day when we had decided to run our country, by like basically you know uh, agreeing to every demands that they made. The relationship is thus: your um, your husband or your wife that has a toxic relationship with you would be both, right? They would be the cause of your distress as well as the uh, person who also makes concessions, right? That I won't trouble you over so and so if you heed my every demand. It's like you put a gun to your head and say, I'll shoot, I'll shoot, I'll shoot, I'll shoot, right? I'll kill myself. That's the kind of a relationship they have, right? And if, or rather, it's like not a gun to their head, it's like a bomb strapped up to them, like I will explode unless you listen to me. So not only will they go themselves, they'll take entire societies with them. That's the kind of toxic relationship that most other non-Muslim societies share. But
So kind
Genji,
of getting back, yeah, kind of just reeling it back. So we went over, we've gone over a lot. Spent an hour. So let's get into this new guy. So this all just kind of started with the 40%
UK.
Nahid is
Yeah.
reservations,
Nahid
which
Islam.
I guess
Yeah.
which I
So
guess been in effect for already years. Like it wasn't anything that was new. And so maybe we could just kind of get to a quick
I have
rundown of the current. Yeah, go.
Yes, I have all the numbers with me. Remember the organization that I talked to you about, Mukti Bahini, which was responsible for the separation of Bangladesh from Pakistan, right?
Right.
And it becoming a different country, the Mukti Bahini. The
Mm,
people who have fought in the Mukti Bahini were called the Mukti Jodhas, or meaning Mukti warriors, the freedom warriors. Mukti is freedom, right?
mm,
So Mukti warriors, and their descendants are now also considered to be, uh, descendants of freedom fighters that fought in the Mukti Bahini. At that time, almost the entire country fought in the Mukti Bahini. So This actually brings me to the recent order of events, and that has to be focused on. I wanted to lay a groundwork so as to for people to understand what Bangladesh is and what is the basic premise of the politics, etc. Uh, but the recent events are far more important. So the this whole sort of drama seems to have begun from prior to 2018, right? And wherein large scale protests were organized in Dhaka and then other parts of Bangladesh, but Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh, wherein there was a protest against 56% reservations in all government jobs in Bangladesh. And this it does
For
not
who?
apply to the private. Yeah, so I'll break down the numbers. So this doesn't apply to private sector jobs, right? So government sector jobs are actually far more important to relatively per capita income poor countries, right? uh,
Mm-hmm.
because it is one of the most sought after generator of jobs because it has secure jobs in it, right? um, so it is a very coveted area, the jobs that are offered to you by the government. Now 56% is like more than half of your jobs that the government is producing. 56%
Mm.
of that is reserved, so that's affirmative action. So for
Reserved for
certain
who?
groups, yes, so that will go into the breakdown. So 56% is reserved for certain groups, and then there are others. Okay, so now the breakdown is this:
Mm.
30% reservation in jobs was offered to the descendants of the Mukti Jodhas or the freedom fighters in the 1971 war. Okay,
Mm.
10% of the positions were allocated to women. Okay, so no
Oh
one can
wow.
say this is not a progressive country. Okay, even
Okay.
India doesn't have that, by the way. Okay,
Mm.
10% of so that's 30, that's 10, 40. Further 10% was offered to what it says here, different districts based on their population. So if you're a geographically backward area where you have amenities to less resources, etc., uh, or you have a large population, there's some criteria, but it's a geographic uh, uh, you know distinction wherein certain districts, certain parts of Bangladesh had that 10% reservation, smaller parts, but 10% was that. And then you have 5% ethnic minorities. Within the 5% ethnic minority reservation, 2% was reserved for Hindus. Within that 5%,
2%.
2%.
Okay, so it was on the base of religion.
No. So 5% to ethnic minorities, and it was an understanding
Oh,
that 2% will go to Hindus, right? So
okay.
there's other ethnic minorities that are also Muslim in Bangladesh.
Mm.
Within that
Mm.
5%, 2% was for Hindus. So the rest 3% was for other groups. And then you have 1% to people with disabilities and trans people.
Okay.
So look how much of an extremist country this is. Okay, Islamic country, Islamic majority, run by Awami League, offering reservation to trans people in jobs. How extremist is this? How undemocratic, you see?
In
And
Bangladesh,
yes, yes,
they had
yes,
reservations for transgender people?
yes, disabilities and trans people in the same
Holy shit.
category. 1%
Wow.
of all.
Okay.
I don't think 1% would be the total population of trans people also in Bangladesh, but
Well,
one
yeah,
percent.
yeah, for sure.
But still, it's a big thing, man. You know.
Even that
So
they had it, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so that alone, all of this together makes the 56% number. Now you have to remember, this is prior to 2018, and this
Hmm.
reservation of 56% reservations in job was offered. I mean, was introduced to the Bangladeshi system since 1972. So in 71, the war was won, and Awami League came into power, and Mujib formed his government. By 72, they had already introduced this reservation system. Okay, so 30% offering it to the freedom fighters back then was an extremely popular policy. Why? Because most of the country had fought in the Mukti Bahini. Many people had taken to arms, so everybody was a freedom fighter. right? I mean, a large chunk, not everybody, but a sizable chunk. So 30% was something that was considered to be, a very popular point of policy. Now, what happened was systematically over the years, as years have passed, right? Between 71 to now, 2024, how many years has it been? Uh, it's almost, yeah, it's 53 years or so now, right? So in the last 40 years or so, there was a sort of s- there was tensions emerging in the Bangladeshi system, and what ended up happening was that uh, there was a opposition to the fact that this 30%, the number 30% for the descendants of the freedom fighters, is a very, very large number to be giving reservations to people, right? And over the years, the narrative became that whichever party came into power, whether it was the Awami League or the BNP, right, uh, they would have to give, I mean, they would give these jobs to people that they prefer, right? Especially because Awami League was the party that formed Bangladesh, right? So this accusation was primarily leveled against the Awami League and not the BNP, which is the right wing party, more so towards Awami League than the BNP. And there was this idea that whoever is close to Sheikh Hasina or the Awami League, they get this thing. Another number that was thrown was that by 2018, 0.13% of the population was the population that qualified to be the descendants of the freedom fighters that fought in the Mukti Bahini. So you have 0.13% of people, very small group, getting 30% reservations in all jobs. So this became a very popular movement. Students across Bangladesh sort of started coalescing, and every now and then there had been protests over this and other things. I mean, in Bangladesh, this wouldn't be a very surprising thing. These things happen. In India, also there have been a number of pro-reservation and anti-reservation protests. In fact, right now one is brewing. I'll tell you about it later. Something big has happened in the reservation policy in India as well. So there is always street protest, not violence, but there's always going to be protests over these things. These things are touchy, I mean, just as affirmative action is a bit, touchy in the US, although it is not that big an issue because the number is less. Now, uh, what the students had started to say was that 0.13% of the population cannot get 30% of the reservation. So there was a lot of drama around this, and by 2018, by a uh, by executive order, which is basically a nice fancy way of saying I said so. The prime minister, who was Sheikh Hasina at the time, she said, "You know what? People are getting crazy over this reservation thing. Let's cancel all reservation." So there was 0% reservation then. Okay, and everybody could enter any jobs. Now this should have calmed the issue down, but the protesters didn't stop, and they started asking for the reservation of Sheikh Hasina and this and that, and she didn't listen to them. And of course, a lot of the anger was also coming from the fact that Sheikh Hasina sort of used a very heavy hand sort of to control protests in many, many occasions. So there is talk of violence to control, chaotic violence on the streets, etc., that the government of the day decided to take, and that didn't sit well. This was a very interesting point of fracture for international powers to enter and play a role here. Now, what has been argued is that the Americans played a very important role in provoking, this anti-quota protest or anti-reservation protest in such a manner that it became all about Sheikh Hasina leaving. Okay,
Hmm.
um, and they wanted her to resign no matter what. Of course, this was motivated by the BNP from behind the scenes, which was in turn motivated by the jihadis supported by the Jamaat-e-Islami, right? And they have a student front also, which was part and parcel of the student protest, which is called the Islamic Shibir or something like that, right? Chhatra Shibir, which means Islamic students camp, right? So that is the student wing of the Jamaat Islam itself. So it is basically BNP's student wing. So these students are also part and parcel, and many people are now arguing a case that this is how the Americans got in, and they wanted Sheikh Hasina out. Now, why did they want Sheikh Hasina out is also an interesting topic of discussion. But we first have to resolve this, number game. That what happened in terms of so 56% reservations now down to 0%. 2018, she says, okay, you know what, everybody's mad. We'll just cut down all reservations. The protests don't stop. In 2022, what happens is in 2020, first of all, in 2020, the lobby of the freedom fighters, whose 30% reservation was cancelled alongside everybody else's, they filed uh, uh, they filed they filed a case in the Supreme Court, saying that this executive order itself is unconstitutional, illegal. Okay, and the reason for that was that a prime minister cannot simply give out orders; it has to pass through the parliamentary process, etc., and it has to be sort of confirmed through what the provisions in the Constitution of Bangladesh are. So they said we are on the losing side of these things, and therefore, what you should do is try to reinstate the reservation. Now, by 2022, the Supreme Court had, in its own wisdom, decided to reintroduce the reservation system, uh, and 2024, the earlier this year, right? A 7% number was introduced. Okay, so all there will be reservations overall, but 7%. Now, I want to break down the 7% number for you. So, Supreme Court ordered that the Bangladeshi Supreme Court, that the veterans quota or the Mukti Jodha quota or the freedom fighters numbers would be up to 5% of all jobs out of total 7% reservation. 2% of these jobs will now be set aside for members of ethnic minorities, which may or may not include Hindus. I'm not clear on this right now. And alongside ethnic minorities, transgender and disabled people also would get the 2% reservation. This is in 2024. The Awami League is trying to introduce this sort of, not Awami League, but Supreme Court. Now, this
So
was
this is
something
what
that,
they were opposing.
yes, and they were
This
not
is the
satisfied with it.
newest, latest one they were opposing. So she
But
dropped it from 52 to 40. Is that what you're saying?
56 to 7.
56. Wait, what?
50,
To 7?
56% of all jobs were reserved before. Okay.
Hmm.
In 2024, the Supreme Court then tabled a proposition that 7% of all jobs are to be
Oh, wow.
So 56 was to be broken down into 30, 10, 10, and uh, 2, and I think, uh, 10, 10, 5, and 1, right? So that was 56%. And then later on 2024, when in 2018, all reservations were cancelled. So in 2024, when the new proposition had been introduced, overall, all the jobs were to be 7%. Within that 7%, you're going to have 5% jobs that will be reserved to the veterans, and 2% jobs that will be reserved for ethnic minorities, disabled people, and transgender people. This was the new breakup. Now,
So I don't
from
understand then when people are saying they were opposing the reservations because nobody
exactly,
else would get a chance. Like,
yeah, yeah, I can't hear you, Jen. Lost you there. Hello.
yeah, sorry, I was just shutting my window. But this is what I don't understand. So, like, the whole student protests were supposed to be because it
Yeah.
was unfair that they were giving reservations. I heard 40%, so nobody else would get a chance. Um, I'm trying to understand
So
where that
that's the
narrative is
thing.
coming from. Yeah.
That's the thing. Now you went down from 56% to 0, and then a reintroduction was in the works, which would make it like a 7%. So effectively, it is still 0. These people were arguing that we don't want 7% also, and it is Sheikh Hasina who has all these like designs on us, and she's undemocratic, this and that. She has to be toppled, she has to be removed, and this was again funded by American money. All of this drama. We'll come to why this was funded by the American money. See, now I know about this because in 2023, this was not the first attempt to topple Sheikh Hasina's government. A friend of mine who works in cybersecurity told me 2 days, no, 1 week before Sheikh Hasina went officially on, you know, on media, and said that, you know, Americans are trying to topple her government, basically, right? Uh, and I didn't believe him till that time, but like that made me take him seriously. Uh,
And this was for the last elections, right? The one
last
that I was
election,
asking you about?
no, so yes, last elections,
Yeah.
and not, no, not just the elections. See, 2023 they already had a government. Hasina was
Mm.
now complaining that the Americans are doing something. Okay,
Right.
at that time there was a lot of speculation. The Chinese are there. This is there. That is there. All nothing. It was the Americans, and I was like, why would the Americans do it? There was a lot of confusion at that time. Remember, you asked me about it too, Jen.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
we, yeah, and so we didn't know what was up, right? So we have finally a clearer picture as to why the Americans were involved. But the long and short of it is that American money financed these, you know, non-government organizations, uh, uh, who were leading the protests, with like students being a front for basically the jihadis that were controlling the entire thing in the background. Um, now, so why were the Americans involved? So what we now know, and what we've been trying to figure out since last year, which is what makes it important for, what you say, um, you know, international audiences, why we're even having this conversation in the first place. Um, see, the Americans seem to want a strategic base in Bangladesh, a port, essentially. And it seems that the Hasina government had rejected that. Okay. Americans have overseas bases all over the world. And Bay of Bengal is not a place where they have a, you know, uh, port. There's one in the Indian Ocean called the island archipelago of Diego Garcia, right? Which is, many people say, where American nukes are also pointed at, you know, the subcontinent. There's nothing to confirm it though officially, but that's what, there has been like a lot of long history. But that, if you look at Diego Garcia, it's very very far away. Hmm? But if you look at this one island called Saint Martin's Island in Bangladesh, it is close to a couple of ports. Now, I would like to present this map so that it becomes more sort of what you call.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, just let me
Yeah.
know.
So I'm
Just
opening
make sure it's
Google
only the
Map.
one tab. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So one tab is visible. Is anything else visible?
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look at this map. Okay.
Yep.
This is the island of Saint Martin's. Now let's
Oh,
zoom out of this place. Okay. This, you see this line here? This line?
yeah, yeah.
This is Bangladesh on this side, left side, right?
Mm.
You see Bengali script written here, and you see there is Burmese script written here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is Myanmar. This is Saint Martin's Island.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Zooming out further, uh, remember it is somewhere here, right? This is the line. The Saint Martin's Island is here. Okay. Um, the Chinese have a port here nearby. Okay. Um, that is called the Kyokfu port. Kyokfu port. So this is a port that has been
Mm.
developed by the Chinese. Okay. And it is
Okay.
right here. Okay. Now,
This
what you
was
have to
is this the
understand.
same one that they were arguing the gas line goes through from
Yes,
that?
yes. Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
this port is the opening on the Bay of Bengal on the western side. Now look at this. You
Strategic
see
port.
this Situate? You see this?
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So Situate is a port which is essentially being developed by India with the permission of the Burmese government. Uh, the same deal has been given to Indians here in the Situate area that has been given to the Chinese in Kaplu. Okay. So this is a, they're saying this is the town of Kyakpu, but like the port is nearby. And I think this is the port. If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I think this might be the port. I'm not too sure. But if you look at the distance in ocean, you know, so there's not a lot of distance here, right? But if you're not taking the land route, I mean, not taking the sea route, the distance between Sitwe and Kyakpu is significant. Okay, so it's almost 10 hours, 11 hours. You see, if you take the land route,
Mm.
but by
Hmm.
sea, it is a short route. So what
Right.
happens if things go south? The Chinese have a very safe point of entry into the Bay of Bengal. Here's India, here's Bangladesh, okay, and China is here, but they now have access here. Okay,
Gotcha.
yes. Now look at this other port called Chattogram. Okay, in Chattogram you have something called Matarbari port. I'll show you. I'll situate to Matarbari port. Okay. Now this port is very interesting. Okay. So now Chattogram city. Now the Chattogram port is a very busy port. It is a important commercial port, and here you have the Matarbari port in this area. You see that?
Hmm.
Now this is close to again St. Martin's Island is here, and the Indian port is here. The Chinese port is right here. So you see how this is strategically done. The thing with Situe port is there is nothing there. I know this because of my own personal contacts that although we have been afforded this land, we have not been able to build it. Why? Because this is also Rohingya territory. Okay,
Hmm.
so this is the tail of Bangladesh, the Chittagong Hill Track that extends all the way here. This is where the Rohingyas are from. This entire area, all of this. Situe is in Rohingya area. So of course there's terrorism, and wherever there is Islamist, there's going to be terrorism, right? So the Chinese port here, the slated Indian port here, which has not been very properly developed, right? Then you have the Matarbari port, which is this is important because this is a port that is being developed by the Japanese. Okay, this port was something that pissed off the Chinese a lot. The reason for this was this port was something that initially the Chinese wanted, right? And the Bangladeshis didn't quite agree with that. Then the Americans had their eyes set on this also. Eventually, a neutral game was played by the Sheikh Hasina government, wherein Matarbari was given to the Japanese, right? And Japanese and Indians have good relations, so this was seen as another a port that is there for India, etc. But in practice, we actually don't have that much of a access. Also, this is still under development; it is not quite complete yet. Okay, now the entire drama is for this one little island. Okay, the Saint Martin's Island. You
Mm.
see, when you see the Kyokpu port here, somewhere here, it is not just like a standalone port. It is connected to a line, okay, a highway, a transnational highway that goes all the way to from Myanmar, okay, and opens somewhere in the Yunnan province here in China. This is China, okay.
Right.
I think
This was what
before.
the a lot of the initial Rohingya conflict was about, if I remember correctly. It had a lot
No,
to do
no,
with it.
it's not just the Rohingya. See, the thing is, in Myanmar, you have a civil war going on, just like Afghanistan, except it is much worse, and nobody is
Yeah.
reporting on it. Right? It is very
Right.
nasty.
Right.
All the ethnic groups are fighting with each other. Right?
So
Plus,
bad.
So
Yeah.
uh, plus many people don't know about Myanmar. At the beginning, it was the Burmese who were using Rohingyas to get rid of Indians in Myanmar to first begin with. Uh, they were using like Rohingyas to send away like all the Hindus from Myanmar. Then later on, the Rohingyas started turning on the Burmese. That's one of the main reasons why like the Burmese started like genociding Rohingyas and stuff. They didn't want Rohingyas to be there. Uh, the main reason for Myanmar like going ahead in that way is that mostly kind of like racial reasons. They did not want people who didn't look like them to be in their homeland. One of the main reasons was that um, the Rohingyas were a problem like everywhere they go. They were not like a problem only for the Burmese and stuff. Even like when they like came into like Bangladesh and stuff, they were doing the same things like in Bangladesh as well. They were trying to create a country out of any country they go into. This was the same situation like even happening in India. Then this is the same situation which happened even in a Muslim majority nation like Indonesia, if you take it as such. Even the Indonesian Muslims didn't want Rohingyas to be there. So yeah, just like a short thing like about Rohingyas, like why they are being genocided and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like they have not genocided local populations over there. They have murdered local Hindus and Buddhists predominantly. That is why the 969 movement of Ashin Virathu turned against them. Okay, we all like to pretend that everywhere Islamists are innocent, but well, whatever. There is a history to the Arakan province, etc. And I don't want to complicate it by giving you the history of Myanmar in this, although it is important. But for now, it is important for you to
That's a
understand that
whole
this,
nother set of
yeah,
streams.
yes, yes,
So deep.
exactly. So so this is the Chinese port here. What you have to see, this connects all the way to China through the city of Puar, I think. Okay, and there's a transnational highway here, which is called the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. So this port actually gives the Chinese direct access to the Bay of Bengal. That means they have access to India, they have access to Bangladesh, right? But guess who is not here? It's the Americans. This little pin that you see, this this is what the Americans wanted, right? And there were a variety of reasons why like Americans were pushing for it. But what you would see since 2022, Uzra Zia, who is the undersecretary, I'll tell you, of human rights or something. She's of Indian origin, unfortunately, my own ethnic group. Undersecretary Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights. This is one of those positions that is used to influence foreign governments, right? Uh, and then you have Donald Lu, right, who is the Assistant Secretary, Bureau of South Asian and Central Affairs, basically Biden's man in South Asia, right? So the thing is, how do I share this? Yeah. So you see Donald Lu, he is he's the man in charge of South Asia. It's like the it's a neo-colonial construct in essence, right? When America didn't really have the colonies around the world, but if like they had viceroys, they would be like people like Donald Lu. So he's in charge of all of South Asia, right? So he's the guy who reports to the president. Well, if
Mm.
he's sane enough to even be
Mhm.
able to listen to him, likely to Kamala Harris, who's also a malicious Indian woman. So, so, so this is these things are these characters are important to understand. You know, these characters are very important to understand. So Donald Lu and Uzra Zeya have been primarily accused of carrying out this because if you look up Uzra Zeya and type Bangladesh, since 2022 she has been making trips to Bangladesh, openly issuing threats to the Bangladeshi government, shaking hands, talking, and then we don't like what you're doing in Bangladesh. We don't think your government is democratic, right? And Sheikh Hasina is on record herself saying this, that she was assured, probably by the American side, that she won't have any issues uh, during these upcoming elections if she were to surrender uh, this port, or surrender certain parts of Bangladesh without specifically mentioning what, and it was the St. Martin's Island. So Americans need access, okay, to the Bay of Bengal. Now, one would think that why would they only topple an entire regime for a strategic base that they are trying to get and they don't? So it has to be more. So some experts are now saying in India that Bangladesh is also sitting on one of the largest stockpiles of, guess what, natural gas. Something which is in short
I was gonna
supply
say
because
fuel or gas or something.
no, but this is important
Mm,
because the largest amount of natural gas is produced by which country? Russia.
Russia. Yeah.
And and they are they are not selling it directly, they are selling it through mediators. One of them is India itself, right? The
Mm.
Western countries are buying. So this is something that is, also being now circulated. I tend to believe this theory. It is not just about getting a strategic post, it is about hitting three birds with one stone, I suspect.
Mhm.
Which is, one thing is also, after COVID in Bangladesh, what had happened was that Bangladesh is a one product, miracle economy, which is textile and finished garments. So all of what you consume in the US, your Nikes, your Adidas, your Versace, your Gucci, all the big brands, all the small brands, all of them, all the finished T-shirts. If it's not made in China, you flip. You know, you try to see the tag and it would say made in Bangladesh. Okay, so and what is interesting is that Bangladesh's success in the garment industry was actually orchestrated by India, because we actually sort of brought down our garment trade of several notches so that Bangladesh could grow. It was a bilateral understanding between you know a government that was favorable to India in Bangladesh, right? And yeah, that way the economy grew, and grew it did, man. On a per capita income basis, Bangladesh became, until recently, it has been richer than all of India. Of course, it's a smaller country, right? But for an Islamic country that has no feasible natural resources until now, which is the natural gas stockpile, they've always had it, they've known it, but they didn't have the money or the motivation or the tech to be able to mine it back then. Nowadays, the tech has also, even for Western countries, it wasn't very feasible to extract it out of Bangladesh back then. But today, with modern technology, with fracking and all of these other things, Bangladesh has suddenly become a very feasible sort of a place to get natural gas. So that's one of the other theories. I suspect that it's all three of them, wherein the 25% of the what is said is almost 25% of the garment industry that the Chinese had was controlled by the Bangladeshis. So what happened was, during the COVID thing, their economy basically crashed in Bangladesh, right? In order to save their industries, the Chinese invested very heavily in the Bangladeshi economy, right? And this made, the Chinese, basically they have a voice in even in Bangladesh now, right? So American businesses are also under threat, right? It is. I mean, it it's like the classic case of putting all the eggs in the same basket, right? So as it is, American businesses are under constant threat of arm twisting and whatnot to be used as a diplomatic card for the Chinese by the Chinese, right? So all the businesses that are there in China are always subject to what they want and things like that, right? So you have sort of diversified in one sector in another country in Bangladesh, and even that comes under threat because the Chinese investment. So that also seems to be another theory. This is something that I have, you know, I believe less on, but I don't think it is not an. I don't think. I do think that it is a big factor. Garments sounds like a very mundane thing, and who cares about it. I would like you to understand that in South Asia, garment has always been a very very big industry. Okay, the remember, to make this a little lighter, you would have seen, Jen, that
In fact,
the
yeah,
Indian.
in fact, like garments were like more important Like ancient India was actually rich because of the clothing which was sold outside.
Yes. And Ashwinji, even modern example, I'll tell you, the
Yeah.
Ambanis, right? Genji. Have you seen
Mm.
all these Instagram reels of this billionaire being married and Rihanna and all, John Cena and all these people
Yeah,
showing up?
yeah, and Kardashians
They-
there, everything. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
the Kanye is there as well. They are
yeah.
people who made their initial money through garments. Now they have diversified. Okay, they,
Wow.
that
Okay.
is the Ambani family. That is the Reliance Corp. It is one of the biggest. Like I mean, almost all the cell phones are, the service providers are them. They are in the petroleum sector. They are in, I mean, textile is something that they started with. Like the current billionaire in that family, Mukesh Ambani, his father Dhirubhai Ambani made his money through garments and textiles, and he made a lot of it, a lot of it. Okay. And then again, Mukesh Ambani like took it to another level, so his son is being married. That's the kind of amount of power the textile industry controls. All of Mumbai, the
Yeah,
commercial capital of India, became what it became because of the textile industry. There was money to be made in textile, and in
Plus,
fact,
like for example, if you take Roman Empire in the past, there was a time when Roman Empire had to pay like so much for the textiles from India. They became like bankrupt. That's how like how expensive the clothing was from India. Yeah, that's just
yeah, so I mean, textile is something, even when it was, you're talking about when it was still what you would consider like a relatively cottage industry. But then at that time, the tech was also not like, there was no machine, there was no industrial revolution. All of that. The finished quality of textile has always been fantastic in India. So it stands to reason that people in the textile sector made a fuck ton of money. So, like I was saying, even Mumbai, the city that you see today, which is the most moneyed city in the country, and it is where you have international, you know, global citizens. They are nominally citizens of India, but really they, walk with all the giants in the world, right? So Ambanis are at the same level. The Reliance Corp is at the same level as Microsoft, or Amazon, Jeff Bezos, etc. Like these are some of the richest top 20, top 10, top 15 richest people in the world. That is what you're talking about. The textile industry actually had to, even right now, the old money in Mumbai is all textile people, all of them. That is the old money in Mumbai. So the thing is, the Indian industries were brought down a few notches for the Bangladeshis to succeed, right? And there was a lot of understandings, and we shifted certain operations to Bangladesh also, and we started doing certain specific things, etc. It's a very tragic story, right? Wherein you help this country in so many things, and they're always constantly thankless. You liberate their country from jihadis, now they want to be jihadis. You give them business, and that like changes their fortunes overnight. Then they start abusing you for it, right? So this happens quite a lot in the subcontinent, wherein no matter how much good India does, it will always bear the brunt of so the thing is, I explained to you the geographic situation, Genji, right? Now, coming back to what happened with the reservation protest, I told you the reservation protest basically went out of hand, and Americans had an interest. They had their own strategic assets that they wanted, and because of that, they have financed the toppling of the regime, wherein you had open threats being issued by Uzra Zaya and various US officials that they don't, and Foreign Policy magazine, I've been tracking constantly that there is no democracy in Bangladesh, this and that, all drama, right? Uh, the thing is, the grounds for why Bangladesh was not considered to be a democracy by the Americans was this: the BNP, which is, like I said, the Islamist party of the Islamists, which is the majority, which is the opposition, the large opposition that is, until 3 or 4 days ago,
yeah,
before the regime was toppled. That is the party. They had actually refused to participate in the elections, the general elections that were going to take place. Prior to any of this had happened, they said, "Oh, elections are not free and fair." So Sheikh Hasina was like, "Listen, I want you to participate. If you don't want to participate, we'll compete and we'll win." So she, I mean, it was on Like Hasina or Awami League did not stop the BNP from contesting elections. This was the jihadis throwing a fit of rage. Probably, they knew what Americans were up to, and they were definitely on their payroll, and this would add to the drama, right? And since they did not participate in the elections, that was then used as a prominent basis for almost all the American experts and authorities that I have seen, that Bangladesh is not a democracy, Bangladesh is not a democracy. Why? Because the opposition party did not contest in the elections. Nobody was mentioning that they did not fight these elections on their own accord. And then it was beneficial for the BNP also to say, yes, yes, she's the one who is running an undemocratic government and this and that. So that is where we are at, right? Eventually, the student protests, the quote unquote student protests, which in the background is also being controlled by the Islamic Chhatra Shibir of the student front of the Jamaat-e Islami. Uh, I mean, until day before yesterday, there was news that a secular and a more centrist government will be installed. By now, today, we know that the Islamists have taken over. Mark my words, even as the military is in control right now, the Islamists are going to take over. It will happen because that is what the movement is right now. We are more and more every hour, we become more sure that the Islamists are in no mood for making any sort of concessions on this. One of the complications that they've hit is because they fought alongside, quote unquote, the platform of students, right? So it has become difficult for them to say that this is an Islamic revolution. Okay, what they what they are saying is, this is student revolution, but they wouldn't want anything.
Jenny is out.
Yeah, yeah,
Jenny
yeah.
is out. Yeah.
I think she'll come back. Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, yeah. Hi, Jen.
Feedback.
I
Yeah,
don't know. My internet went out.
it's fine. So what I was saying was, one of the things that happened, the complication, right, is that the Islamists are now not able to say that this was an Islamic revolution because the platform that was used was that of students, right? But rest assured, they are taking over, and they will take over. The
I mean,
military
like,
also.
we literally saw like Taliban flags in the moment.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right. So this guy
One more in
Eunice,
Britain,
right? Is he on? So he's been propped up by
American stooge.
these students, right?
Students, my ass, he's an American stooge. So Muhammad Yunus's, Muhammad Yunus's claim to fame is that he's a billionaire. Obviously, he's an economist as well. He basically introduced a plan of action for the growth of businesses in Bangladesh. Okay, so the textile industry slowly and steadily came into the Bangladesh. Some of it was because of their own policies that they were introducing, and then some of it was also aided by America, by Indians, like looking to, like, sort of uh, shift some of their manufacturing voluntarily to Bangladesh for mutual growth and understanding, etc. So what basically ended up happening is, Muhammad Yunus is this guy. He introduced this idea of microfinancing, right? So if you're a poor person, you will be given small loans, etc., to set up your sweatshop or any other kind of a thing, which largely then becomes a part of the larger finished garments and, like, garment processing, sector in Bangladesh, right? So by issuing small loans to people, they were ensuring that everybody becomes a part of the larger economic advantages that would come. It is essentially a sweatshop economy. Bangladeshi garments industry is a sweatshop economy. That is the secret sauce behind the economic success of Bangladesh. So Muhammad Yunus has received a Nobel Peace Prize, which is a
Oh,
clear indicator of how Malala got it, and then Malala turned Islamist, right? So these,
yeah.
so Yunus is also considered to be somewhat of an Islamist bent. Because he's a professor, he's an economist. So students are the. I mean, there are no students. Okay, I'm just talking about people who are pretending to be leaders of, like, these student groups. They are basically of the. I mean, they are saying essentially that Yunus is educated, literate, man, and he's smart. And this is a Bengali obsession of intelligentsia and intellectuals, etc. It's not just in Bangladesh; it is there in India as well, right? So Muhammad Yunus becomes the face, etc. But the thing is, he's American. Like basically, he's like he's basically like on the American side, and I would say more of Democratic Party situation, right? So more Democrats oriented than Republican oriented, much more Democrat oriented, right? So that is what is going on.
Now, I've
Yunus
heard
has
people refer to him as communist, and I've heard people refer to him as Islamist.
yes, so he communist. I don't know because he was all for like See, the thing with even if you're a socialist, people will accuse you of being a communist. So while he is somebody who
Right, right.
believes in free market enterprise and the growth of economy, etc., the welfare that would come from such a growth should also be equally distributed to the people who deserve it. That's what Yunus's
Mm,
argument has been. So
mm,
he's complex like that. But the Islamist argument seems to be largely true that Bangladeshi men of that generation, I mean, this obsession with religion, etc., is secretly there. Okay, see, try to look at it from and a Muslim's perspective, not even an Islamist perspective. Like that ghost idiot was barking right now. I mean, they see that we bark at Western societies, we do this, we do that, and we get to have our say. We will kill you, and
mm,
then we'll accuse you of murdering me, while your
mhm,
people are dead, right? So when you see that kind of bullying sort of fly, even if you're a piss poor piece of shit country that nobody cares about, and if you're Bangladesh is not like that, I'm saying, but there are other smaller Islamic countries, they have aspirations too. That hey, this
mhm,
is something that seems to work. If we do this, white people get scared. Okay, it's
mm.
literally like a force field around them. Okay, see, out of all of the drama that has happened, Islamists have
And you
remained
could
safe
call
in
him
all of this.
racist on top of it, and then it like you
Yes,
could really get
yes,
them to
and
do anything that you want them
exactly.
to do. Like,
But
yeah, all right.
notice one thing, Genji. Notice one thing.
Uh,
In all of this drama, Islamists seem to be protected. Nothing happens to Pakistan. In fact, Pakistan is reported to have uh, been helpful to the BNP. Again, Pakistan takes orders from who? The United States, right? So, I mean, the Pakistani ISI, which is their intelligence operation, I mean, organization, that has been also involved. So, the Islamists are safe in all of this. Nothing happens to them ever. Meanwhile, a lot of vitriol on Hindus in India for no apparent reason has been the flavor of the day. I mean, flavor of past few years now in Western media. Nothing has been reported on Bangladesh. Now, again, that
mhm,
jihadi janitor that was barking a few minutes ago is talking about how there's persecution in India of Muslims and Christians. I mean, a lot of it is just dramatic propaganda. People, if they were
mhm,
persecuted, they wouldn't even have voices to complain about things. Okay. We've seen in Manipur how persecuted the Christians were there, right? You only would hear one side of the story, and the other side of the story was never really told. So but the thing is, right now, as soon as this secular democratic revolution has happened and the dictator has been toppled, the first thing that is happening, screw Hindus, okay? Let's say you don't like Hindus. They have gone after Buddhists, they've
mm.
gone after Christians, and they've gone after Hindus. Now, what I
Yeah.
think Ashwinji is going to find interesting is that a lot of these Hindus, sir, that have been lynched, etc., and killed are politically active people. Of course, there's what do you call uh, what's the word? There's collateral damage of other Hindus also. Like stray Hindus have also been murdered. But these political people are very interesting because all of them, a large chunk of these Hindus are actually commies. Okay, so a
Wow.
lot of them, yes, a lot of them. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If the dominant conservative uh, uh, ideological framework in a country like Bangladesh is an Islamic one, you are regarded as the kafirun or the infidels. You would take the position of the extreme left, right? Today, uh, Indian part of Bengal, right, which is called West Bengal, which is now a state in India, is considered to be a bastion for communist politics. You see, this is very interesting because in 1971, when the war happened, a slew of Bangladeshi Hindus came into, what is West Bengal in India, and with them, they brought the Communist Party's politics. So overnight, you had a large-scale support of communists in Bengal, right? So, and they ended up ruling West Bengal through electoral process, by the way, till 1980. So communists were actually elected members of the parliament in India, okay, thanks to Bengal. And this was all Bangladeshi Hindus pooling inside West Bengal. And I mean, communist politics was always there in West Bengal, but it became much more popular because of a large scale population that came in the 1971. A
I
lot of
mean,
people,
like, since Hindus didn't like read scriptures or something like that, most
sir,
Hindus like were attracted to communism ideas. So yeah.
yes. And Ashwinji, this is a very well known fact that the biggest community that is asleep in the world right now is the Hindu community. Okay, we have a penchant for kicking our own asses. Okay, so this is what happened, and right now the popular, even though I am more sort of leaning towards like okay, Hindus of the world should be protected, etc. The thing with Bangladeshi Hindus is that the popular form of politics that they do is communism. Okay, so you want a second wave of communist upsurge in West Bengal? Fantastic. They will come. They will bring communism with them.
I mean, the
So yeah,
problem with this is that like there is no education amongst Hindus of what actual communism is, because we have studied a delusional form of communism. Like, Indian communism is actually different from the communism like what is taught. So like we get like more like a diluted form. So
exactly.
to an extent, communism is seen as left wing in India. To an
Yeah,
extent.
yeah. It is left wing, but thing is, everybody seems to be talking about what people in Bangladesh are saying about what is happening in Bangladesh. I am
Mhm.
talking to my friends who are in West Bengal right now in India,
Mhm.
Bengali friends, Bengali Hindus that are nationalists. It is a rare breed, but it is present.
Yeah.
They are saying the biggest mistake that you'll do is get these people in. I am divided on this. Like even as a nationalist, I am afraid. I don't know what to say. Are you
Because
understanding?
the problem is that, like, did you notice that video, like, where a girl was tied up or something? Did you notice that video?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that.
That girl actually participated in the student protest, if you
Yeah,
didn't know.
yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. See, thing is, even if you look at the US, right, who is more woke than the woke white people or the black people? It's the Indians. The Indians are actually arguing a case for themselves to be white adjacent. Can you believe it? While they are
Because,
a
like,
micro
we
minority,
were like,
or they are a
let
micro
yeah,
minority
let me give
from,
my point.
yeah,
For example, like, Hindu were like in a situation when colonization happened. Mainly it began in Bengal to an extent that Hindus started asking the colonizers, civilizers. This is the kind of attitude we had during the colonization period.
no, sir. I think see that is wherever colonial presence was great. Okay, there was
Mhm.
colonial political influence also. You can't. I mean, I don't mean to say it otherwise, but try and understand. You would notice that in Tamil Nadu also, right?
Yeah.
The oldest sort of uh, uh, the fort that was set up by the British is actually in Tamil Nadu.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's
Because
it's
first
yeah.
South was captured. Like, if you
South
actually see
captured,
before even.
but they were,
Yeah.
not able to take over so much. So then after 1757, when they entered through Bengal, and in 1758, that is the pivotal moment, the Battle of Plassey, and then they start taking over the north. Then they come to the south later. So it's pretty interesting in that sense, right? But that cannot be held against it. There is more complexity of the politics of communism, and in Bengal, there's other things that you have to look at. The thing is, I don't want to complicate this argument further. You have to look at for example, places where you can start if you're interested. You have to look at the
Mhm.
Tibhaga, how
Yeah.
land was distributed amongst Bengali farmers and farm owners, etc. And then what led to the popularity of uh, political. I mean, communism being a popular political flavor in West Bengal. But all of this is besides the point. My larger point is this: that people in West Bengal who are also Bengali, Hindu Bengalis, a lot of them are really afraid of the fact that there'll be a second wave of communist influx with the coming of Hindus here, because Bangladeshi Hindus don't really haven't really been known for supporting India. Okay, like unlike Pakistani Hindus, where there is at least some vocal voices who say things that are pro-India, Bangladeshi Hindus have never been considered to be like very pro-India. Okay,
I
they don't
mean,
believe
like, I don't exactly know like how to express that. On one hand, like you're
exactly.
seeing a population dying. On other hand, like this population would not help you much. So,
It will
like,
create problems for you instead.
mhm,
That is the issue.
that is the kind of like dilemma kind of situation you're living in.
Yes,
Because
and
if yeah, because
Ashwinji,
if yeah,
what further complicates this argument? The issue is
mhm,
that obviously not everybody is going to be a communist.
yeah,
Not all Bangladeshi Hindus will be communists, but a
mhm,
sizable chunk of them is. Okay, so when you create this criteria that because they are Hindus, that is why they should fit into the whole CA thing, etc., and therefore they have to be brought in, it creates a problem. And there is no other way to rescue them also. But then I'm thinking, why take them? It's a complicated problem. There are Bangladeshi Hindus that have migrated in three or four ways. One is in 1920s, okay, the first wave. Second is the 1947 wave. Until 47, you have largely nationalistic Bangladeshi Hindus that have migrated. They already live in India. Then the third wave is in 1971, and this would be like the fourth wave. 71 onwards, you see communism coming in. After Bangladesh is created as a separate country, before that they have experience of Pakistan as a separate country over there, Islamist takeover. So anybody you can say safely after 50 or 1950 or something, they started having a bend towards the left in Bangladeshi Hindu community. So I have a very close friend whose family came in 1947, right? And they are fervently nationalistic. These are Bangladeshi Hindus of Delhi who are saying that we don't want them. They're scary, man. If these
yeah.
guys come like that, that is what the issue is. On one hand, you have this like rampant like religious rioting and killing and murders. On the other hand, they're commies. So what are you gonna do? This is something which is not in the popular discourse, and no matter how many Google searches you'll do, you will not find this out. It is this kind of history is important to know and understand, because we ignored Bangladesh's like you were also saying, radical element, because we had a role to play in 1971. It was you know inconvenient for us to talk about those things.
Mhm.
Just because you're Mukti Bahini, just because you're a Bangladeshi nationalist, doesn't mean that you'll also not be a jihadi later, which they
Yeah.
became. How messed up does a religious political community have to be, that the people who genocide the hell out of you want to go back in their laps again? That is the power of political Islam that people don't understand.
I mean, like communism and Islam staying together was always a thing. It's not like it was not something new. For example, like if we take even communists and Islamists in India, you actually see them both aligning with each other. But they are like so small in numbers. It's actually like they cannot form governments in India on their own. Like apart from
Yes,
like West Bengal, Kerala, and Tamil
they,
Nadu to
they
an
try to
extent.
they
Yeah.
try to run their parallel governments in districts
Mhm.
where they have a majority, right? This is very well
Yeah.
known. If they're over 30%, like in my home state, there are two districts. One is the district of Kishanganj, which is majority Muslim, 70% or so. Then you have the Katihar district, right? Katihar is 40% Muslim, but for all intents and purposes, doesn't matter if 60% of the population is Hindus and others. 40% Muslims mean that the entire culture of the district is become Islamic. So
Yeah.
they run parallel governments despite of not being able to run large governments.
And this one, like Islamophobic and alarmist kind of. I mean, like it's quite hypocritical. Like when Muslims are like persecuted, like Al Jazeera, like
And they are killing
kind
their
of
own, and
reports
now
the
they're
news.
crying Islamophobia. They're murdering their own kind, and then they're murdering other Hindus. Then they're saying there's Islamophobia.
But
They're
look at
looking.
how, look at the headline. Look at the headline. Islamophobic alarmist. How
Yeah.
some India outlets covered Bangladesh crisis. Like
Let's see.
it's
Let's see how Islamophobic
ridiculous.
we are when the BNP takes over.
Right, right, right. So if one, like, look at everything that's happening, and they'll downplay the amount of people, they'll downplay everything like it's nothing. Oh, just only 100 or 200 Hindus got,
Just 100
murdered. It's
animals
not a
that were
big
slaughtered.
deal. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's
like
not a genocide. It's
um,
nothing. Like they're making,
imagine
they're
like
so
100
Islamophobic
children
to
being
point
killed
this
in.
out.
I mean, like just think 100 children being killed in Gaza, and see the same report how Al Jazeera like kind of covers it.
Global.
You'll see like
That's
over exaggeration in numbers and stuff. Over
that's why
exaggeration would happen everywhere.
this stream is called All Eyes on Bangladesh because it's named
Mhm.
after all
Yeah.
eyes on Rafah, right?
Mhm.
Because something happens to them, you pinch them, they start crying, right? They will murder you, stab you, drink your blood. Even then, like everything is like as long as a
Now, this
non-Muslim
was
dies,
from
there's no life is
3 days ago, and
Mhm.
they're saying that individual Al Jazeera reporters have verified that only 2 Hindus have been killed since Hasina's oust on Monday.
I don't
One
just
police
wonder
officer
what
and
lost.
one
what
activist.
the
But but the other one, well, let me try to find it, will tell you
I
that
mean,
it
like
was 20 something
Bangladeshi
people of her
newspapers,
party.
like
Mhm.
because like what they're trying to do is like on one hand they're telling like the Hindus are not killed much. On other hand, they were telling that Hindus have been like supporting the Awami League. That is why they are getting killed. I don't know like what
Exactly,
you're trying to like say in that.
exactly.
I don't know what you're
Best
trying
part
to
is
frame over there.
the best part is Hindus, like a lot of them don't just support Awami League. A lot of them ended up in the BNP camp simply because of the fact that the communists were with them. So, so a lot of the Hindus were inadvertently supporting the
I
BNP.
mean, a girl like who posted like 1 hour before. I mean, when Hasina like fled, the girl posted on Twitter saying that um, I am safe. Like Bangladesh is free, and like don't spread propaganda. Like Hindus are safe in Bangladesh. In just 1 hour after they post, she posts like Hindus are getting attacked for no reason, and she was the girl who you actually see on the video who's getting tied up. She was the same girl who posted that comment section. Who
This is
posted on
why.
Twitter.
This is
Yeah.
why one loses any sense of sensitivity in these matters. People like me just get angry, and we don't have any sensitivity left in us. How many times have we have to, this? Um, yeah. So Al Jazeera is interesting, but you couldn't expect anything else, Jen, from them. But did you see the New York Times article? The first article that they
Yes,
published, they wrote revenge attacks on Hindus.
right,
Then somebody
right.
fucking complained, and then they removed that revenge attacks, and then it's attacks on Hindus. What is this? Like, how are the Americans being controlled in this regard? Like, what is going on? America's made a massive blunder. Instead of talking, they thought that these are the chips on the table, and we can arm twist our way to. Let us see you know, for how long another Islamist government is loyal to Americans. You know, they are very. It's you have it by experience. No, you have knowledge of this by experience. Pakistanis are very loyal, yeah, to the Americans. The Taliban in Afghanistan ended up being very loyal, which was supported, by the way, in the beginning
Oh yeah.
against the Soviets. People forget that. Okay, every time you strike a deal with Islamists, like Americans, why don't they learn? Okay, so you got your ass handed to yourself in Afghanistan, then you got your ass handed to you in Iraq. Baathis were actually left of center, so the ISIS people were actually on the side of the Americans back in the day. Okay, people who became ISIS later, they were the extremist jihadis, Muslim Brotherhood people. Same thing happened in Egypt.
Mm.
Same thing happened in various parts of Africa. I mean, Nigeria is a nasty example of that. And yet again, these people somehow think that Islamists are going to be loyal to them. I don't understand, like American, strategic policy framework people. I don't get it. Like how many times you have to make
Well,
the same
I
mistake?
mean, like NATO in the past had a goal of keeping countries unstable for a long time. For example, like
They did
during
their
the
own.
1971 war, they actually wanted to split India into many halves. If USSR didn't like intervene, that would have been the case for India.
We were on
mm.
the brink of a nuclear war in the Bay of
Yeah,
Bengal in 71. Do you know this,
in
Jen?
1970, yeah,
The,
See,
the
the thing
Americans were
is that
so.
we don't have to bear the brunt of it, right? Like the fighting's not happening here. We don't have to deal with the hardline Islamists here in our land. So we don't have to like really face all the repercussions of what we're
Yes,
doing,
I
right? It's you
mean, like
guys
but
that
that
is
do it.
why
It's
9/11
terrible.
happened. I'm just
Well,
telling that
right.
is why
That's
9/11
one,
happened.
and then
Yeah,
still people want to say like, "Oh no, that was an inside job. That was our
exactly.
fault. That was an intelligence, but we planned it. It was a
that's
demolition.
basically
It wasn't
leftists of
this."
India, I would say. No, I
Yeah.
personally
Jen,
So
would say that is basically leftists of India. I
yeah.
mean, like,
Jen,
if you're starting to say uh, a terror attack is actually an inside job, I don't know, like, where would you even defend your country with? For example,
you
like
have
the
read.
same 2111 attack in India was
Hmm.
said the same thing by the left wing in India. They were blaming the Hindus for the attack. They were
Right.
Yep,
telling you provoked the
it was an
Muslims
inside
so
job.
much. Yeah, the
2611 was
Muslims
also an
attack.
inside job.
Yeah,
Anywhere where jihadis attack, it becomes an inside job by the victim community. It's the same case whether you like it or not. It's the same case in Israel also. They got attacked. Now they are saying it's an inside job by the Israelis. Now, one of the most wonderful things on while we are on the subject of Israel a little bit, you love this. While you're saying, Jen, that we don't have to bear the brunt of it, and that's a very, you're right, and it's a very faceless sort of a entity. But what if I give you a face for this? Who did it? Who brought the nukes in the Bay of Bengal? It was Henry Kissinger. Okay,
Mm.
Henry Kissinger was so pro Pakistan, so pro genocide, a Jewish man, a victim of the genocide himself, so pro genocide in Bangladesh that he was willing to bring in nukes. A nuclear submarine was brought in the Bay of Bengal to fight against India
Right.
and prevent the breakup of Bangladesh. Okay, and had the Soviets not brought their own nuclear submarine, we would have been fucked. Okay,
Mm.
it was like this is a story never told because it's a inconvenient story for the American military establishment. Okay,
this is one of the
because
main reasons why Indians support Russia over USA.
yeah,
You
man, you want
should
One
to
of the
nuke
main.
us like yeah.
you
So the
shouldn't
thing
blame
is,
me for it. It's obvious. Why do you think? Of course you should.
people talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. We had our own version of the freaking nuclear missile crisis. You had the Americans threatening us to nuke us because somehow they thought that it's some sort of a great game in a proxy war, and Had the Russians not come with their nuclear, not submarine, I think nuclear ship, the submarine was with the Americans something. We would have been dead meat, man. We would have been dead meat.
I mean, the president of USA at that time basically said we should nuke India to an extent they would never come back into civilization. That's the kind of that is the kind of words the American president used at that time.
Well,
I mean, it's not surprising it was Nixon. So,
mm,
but the thing is, I hold, uh, I don't hold Nixon responsible for this. This was all Kissinger. When you examine it further, you'll realize it's Kissinger thinking that he's a smart ass and he can move around with chess pieces such that. I mean, Americans are friends with all kinds of shady characters. I mean, I don't want you to get into the whole Khalistani thing also, but this is getting to a point where there is a distrust and an annoyance, right? So you try
as
to
there
move chess
rightly
pieces.
should be.
Dude, what are friends for? To fuck with you?
Yeah.
Huh? I don't get it. Like, so you're tightening up our screws in Manipur. That's where American involvement and the Chinese involvement is also there. Proxy wars are being fought on the eastern front in India. In Myanmar, there's a full-on proxy war between the Chinese and the Americans. Okay,
I
whatever.
mean, like
Then
if you didn't realize, Manipur conflict reached the West, like
because of the
when
American,
Indians weren't aware. I'm just telling the
exactly,
Indians
exactly,
weren't aware about the Manipur crisis. Within that, the whole West took it to UN before
yeah.
even it happened in India. Like
Ashwin
Indians,
ji,
yeah.
when Jen ji asked me about it for the first time, I was actually less aware about it because this news had spread like wildfire through legacy media in the US that there's something happening to Christians in India. It was
Right.
part of a strategic pull that the Americans were trying to play games in Manipur, and there
Because
again the face of
I
the
mean,
Chinese.
like it was mentioned to an extent. USA was angry at India for not condemning Russia in the Ukraine war. That was
Right.
one of the main reasons
Exactly.
why they wanted to create a civil war like situation in India, and they expected Modi government to side with the Hindus and fight against cookies. So like it will lead to a Christian state in the northeastern front. That's exactly the plan was going on. Is why like the insider information of the BJP actually said like that is one of the main reasons why BJP didn't act. They got the intelligence that the West was involved in that conflict. That if India took a stance against the
Yeah,
Christians,
it will paint
it
you a
would have
very bad
definitely
picture.
happened in India.
So, with
Well,
that
I
being
don't think.
said, I think that's a good place because we are going over 2 hours. We'll
Yeah.
try to wrap it up soon, but I think that's a good place to kind of end. Let's talk about the Christian state that Sheikh Hasina was mentioning that we, America, had wanted to carve out, and kind of the thing because it relates to the cookie and incidents in Manipur and everything like that. We could kind of talk about that for
They basically want to carve out a land. Yeah, they
about 12
basically want to carve out a
10,
land
12
between Bangladesh,
yeah.
Myanmar, and India. There is even a map
Mm,
where it's called Cookie Land, something like that. In that, they specifically show like parts of India, parts of Bangladesh, and parts of Myanmar becoming part of a part of a Christian land. Irony is that it was supported by the left wing in Israel. Hello.
supported by, I think we lost them. Oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the left
the
wing
left
in
wing
Israel.
in
Yeah.
Israel.
So,
Okay. Oh, the left
so
wing in India. Okay.
the Christian
The
state thing
left
is
wing
very
in
interesting.
Israel. Yeah.
Mm.
Israeli left is another one. I mean, you want to see like absolutely batshit kooky people, you should meet some Jewish lefties. They are another breed of, what do you call,
Yeah. Well,
self-damaging
let's
people in their own community.
keep that.
So
My stream will get shut down,
yeah,
so we'll keep
yeah,
that for a different time.
well, yeah. So so let's not even go there because
Yeah.
cancel culture is not something that the jihadis gave to the world. We know who gave it. Anyway. So
All right.
look at this guy. Okay, you see who he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
You know who Billy Graham is?
Yeah.
Yes. So one of
Evangelical.
his major contributions was increase of evangelical activity in India. Okay,
Mm.
and the thing is, 1947 is the date from which we measure our own, like, modern history, because that's when the Indian independence from the British happened, right? Interestingly, northeast of India has not largely been Christianized by the British. You see, in places like Tamil Nadu, for example, the British had a long-standing presence, and like other places also. So Christianity spread through like the French missionaries and British missionaries over a slower sort of, but it was done with a lot of like planning, etc., effort, etc. That is all true. But see, after 47, when new countries were formed in the post-colonial era, American evangelists were, really active. And after the visit of Billy Graham in India, the first visit, the activities in the Northeast increased. So Northeast had some chunk of it had been Christianized, but not to the extent of the Christianization that followed. So you will see that a large majority of people are some sort of American style Protestants. Most prominently in Nagaland, you have the Baptists, very popular church, and that's an American church, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
so the the areas that you see, if you look up like the map, right, of whatever has been proposed as a cookie land or Christian state, or that is in the realm of conspiracy theory till now, to be honest. Many experts have also argued that, I mean, Hasina might be making things up to, rile up, policymakers in India, whatever. It could be true as well. I won't put it beyond Americans, because you see, very meticulously, western borders that touch India, in Myanmar, that area has also been Christianized. Okay,
mm.
then you have Manipur, parts of Arunachal, which the Chinese also seem to want. You have Nagaland. These places are Christianized, and most of the churches that are active and really involved in the evangelical work are the American churches. And American representatives come all the time under the garb of tourism, etc. They say we are not doing anything, but because it's illegal to, you know, run conversion factories in India now.
Proselytize. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, proselytize that is fine, but to run coercion-based conversion tactics and conversion factories rather, that is something that is banned by law in India. So you have to be under the radar for this, but that doesn't stop. The you saw that incidents with that Chinese, half Chinese, half white American fellow who went to the Andaman Island to convert people, right? Who are
Yeah.
uncontacted
They
people for
killed
the last.
him.
Yeah, they killed him. Very interesting. I don't want to comment on that because I don't want your stream to be shut down or cancelled. But you see how it happens. He was Canadian, by the way. So
Right.
North American evangelicals are very audacious in democratic countries like India, because every time you try to check them for like weird activities, they'll start citing, if this is a democratic country, then why do people not have right to convert actually? That is deeply like annoying. Okay,
Mm.
because we don't have like a backdoor entry into our belief system. You just born into this, right? So there is that element of the what you see as cookie land, right? Which is also a very interesting name to have. Uh, that is a very Christianized area, and it is actually American evangelical and missionaries. Even Catholic Church has been active, but Catholic
Mm.
Church is mostly a legacy of the British, I would say, the British and the French Catholics, the Jesuits, etc. All of them. But then American Catholics are also active. but
But
not to such an extent.
ironically, the Catholics in India support the BJP, while the
Yeah, yeah,
Protestants like, are against BJP.
yeah. And you see this fellow like Dinesh D'Souza, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
absolute joker. He himself is a upper caste Brahmin converted to Christianity, right? Members of his family are what you call part of the archdiocese, and like all of that. Archdiocese, some of them, I think he's Catholic, if I'm not wrong. If he is not, then I'm sure like he's members of his family in high places. He's talked about in the past. And D'Souza is an idiot. I remember one time he said that, when Christianity first came to Goa, people came running because they wanted to be freed from caste. He did not failed to mention about the Goan Inquisition and the forceful, you know, violent conversions that took
If
place
you
during that.
weren't Christian, you'll be basically killed by the
Yes.
Portuguese.
So, and this is what the descendants of those people are now doing. That
Oh.
they are. And D'Souza is very interesting because he's been pardoned by President Trump himself, so powerful figure in the conservative political side. So you don't know who to be friends with. It's not like Republicans are the are the more beneficial choice for most Indians, but it's not like they are not bad shit either. Okay, but they're better than these bloody psycho lefties that you have these days. I mean, if it was classical Marxism, also I would have understood. But this sort of postmodernist, everything is queer, everything, nothing has objective reality, everything is malleable. It's,
Mhm.
it's detrimental to the classic left, also, to be honest.
It is basically like Anole alliance between the two parties.
So, Genji, I think you should wrap up. If you want comments
Mhm.
from Ashwinji, you should take it. Uh, but thank you for carrying out today's
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate you so much. We should do this again and kind of monitor the situation. We'll see what unfolds in the next couple of weeks, what the government decides to do, what the military decides to do. Um, Try to get some accurate numbers. And yeah, just watch how the media reports this whole situation. They're going to make Hindus look bad, as always. And, we'll never have, I guess, that not victim status, but even a correct portrayal of what's happening
Yeah,
to us, right? So
if you die,
yeah,
they
it's
downplay it.
messed up. It's
Like I am not sure what do you do now in this
yeah,
situation. Your death is not important enough for New York Times because you're not the right religion. It's
right,
insanity.
right,
Okay,
exactly.
we are making a noise even on Hindus with my reservations that I told you about because we are India. Who's making a noise about
Mm,
Buddhists? The nearest country to them, Myanmar, is
nobody,
in itself in a civil war situation. Nobody's talking
right.
about Buddhists. And no,
Nope.
nobody's certainly talking about the Christians that have been massacred right now in
Yeah,
Bangladesh.
that's surprising too, because usually
You
they're the
see, they,
ones to get the top spot, the first,
they, the thing
persecution.
is, in DC, they are worried about Manipur, but they are not
Hmm.
worried about what is happening in Bangladesh. So Christians are not dying there; they're only dying in India. See,
Yeah,
my
it
my
only depends who's killing them,
who's
right?
killing them? Yes.
Yeah,
And
so it only matters if they're being killed by pagans, right? If they're being killed by other Abrahamics, then we don't want to talk about that.
yeah,
So it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
so so
Anna and I
one
was
last
just
thing.
getting ready to close the
Yeah,
stream. We've been
we're
live for
closing.
about 2.5 hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
One last thing I want to say,
It's
Janji. Uh,
mm,
I think it's important. See, I don't know where the Democrats are taking international politics and discourse, but one of the theories that keeps on, surfacing in think tank circles, etc., is that the Democrats seem to be playing this game of spreading as much chaos as possible if Trump comes into power. Okay, so that
mm,
he's busy, sort of extinguishing all these fires that they've lit. If they come back into power, they have all the buttons in their hands to push and pull. right? And they can shut
Mhm.
it down anytime they want because they are the ones who are creating these problems. So I think for the betterment of, and this is my 2 cents as a non-American citizen, and I'm not suggesting what, like, you should do or whoever is an American citizen should do, but at least as Indian Americans, you should have some shame. Okay, they are trying to get under your skin. They are burning and threatening you in the United States and in Canada. Have some shame. Even if you're not a significant majority of the population, I mean, have some semblance of self-respect and vote for Mr. Trump. That is your last hope. You've already made all your children woke. You were very happy going to the US and Canada thinking that you'll have some sort of a privileged position there. And yes, you have money there, you made money there, only because you sold all the feudal lands that you left here, right? Not that I have anything against it, but it is the Indian elite that is there in the US mostly. And only after the IT boom started that, middle class people started going. This has created a very toxic environment in the Indian American community. I have no, I have no hesitation in saying that Indian American diaspora is some of the most distrusted diaspora in New Delhi. I know this because I have heard it from people who serve in the Ministry of External Affairs in India. They don't trust you. Show some, self respect and at least vote in your favor. Vote for Trump. You know, if you worry about your old country and if you worry about the future of your own children, because now they're bringing the caste bill also, right? So now you'll be also discriminated against. Okay, they stopped it in California, they'll do it again. All of these
It's
ways are
just
like,
like I just wish that. Well, see, it's who benefits you. They vote to who benefits them, right? So the woke ones will see that the Democrat Party like benefits them more so as far as, but see, they even don't like the people who are here, like the NRI, not like the NRIs that are here on student visas. They get fucked. Sorry for my language, by the government, right? And they should be pissed off that the Democrats give more benefits to asylum seekers and illegals than they do to actually like hardworking legal people who are here on like F1 visa, right? Or so instead of being pissed at them, they should be like they end up loving them, and I don't understand like what it is, but yeah, I don't know.
Because I
That's a
have
whole
seen
nother.
Indian students like who were there in Palestine protest. I'm talking about Hindus,
Yes,
not even talking about
yes,
Muslims.
yes. It's
if you
crazy.
be, if you are this selfish, who will like you back in old country? Are you sure like what you're doing is feasible? I mean, you're burning your own, you're burning all the bridges that you have with the old country. Come on,
I mean,
don't
like,
do this to yourself.
it almost looks like uh, you just want to be on the good side of the left wing, so you bring all this
Yes.
thing up on yourself.
Oh, Ashwinji, are you surprised? What is Kamala Harris? Who is she? By boot licking and ass licking, they have gotten all the way to the top. You think these Indian Americans are going to stop anytime soon? I am sorry. If you get offended, go fuck yourselves. Nobody likes you. Nobody likes you. Have some shame, vote for Trump. I'm not telling anybody else this. Have some shame, vote for Trump.
Yeah,
We'll see
I
what
think
happens.
we
It's
can
soon
wrap it up.
coming. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. It's 2 o'clock. We've been here for 2.5 hours. Thank you to everybody who's come through. Thank you to my panelists, Ashwin, Gograputra. You guys made the show today. Um, Everyone who commented. It was getting heated there for a little while until Ghost went live and took all my viewers, but whatever. I'll get them back in some other forms. See, me and Ghost have like this agreement, right? I can go in his YouTube chat and say like whatever I want. Like I can go over there and say Jai Shri Ram in front of all the jihadis or whatever. So,
Is,
so that's why
is our jihadi
I give him a little bit of rope.
is our jihadi
What's
janitor
that?
also Pakistani? Is our jihadi janitor also Pakistani?
Of course, he's a Jata.
Oh
He's
my!
a
Oh yeah!
Jata.
Oh, I know him. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course, he's a Jata Punjabi Muslim. Yeah, so
Oh,
we
the
kind of
same people who murdered Bengalis in 1971. Oh,
oh,
sure.
right,
Of course, he has
right,
nothing to do with this, right? He has nothing to
yeah.
do with the genocide that happened in Bangladesh.
No, he's a British. He's a Britisher
Yes.
national. So
Where are you from, bro?
yeah,
I'm from
right,
London. Yeah, sure.
right. But that's fine. Shout out to Ghost anyway. Like, yeah, we kind of have an understanding, so he could. I give him a little bit of freedom. But I don't like to block opposition anyway. Like, I kind of welcome it and let them say their thing. So that's just kind of how I roll. But yeah, I'm gonna shut it down. Thank you guys again so much. Big up Anna and Sami in the chat. Thanks for coming through at the end. Share the stream out, bring awareness, do your hashtags, all eyes on Bangladesh, save Bangladesh Hindus. And yeah, let's stand up for our people. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ram, Har Har Mahadev. Namaste, everyone.